Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm gonna pause as we welcome in everyone to the webinar today. Thank you for joining us again. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement here at California State University, Long Beach. And we thank you for joining us for this edition of our 49er Industry Chat. Before we start, I would like to let you know this session is being recorded and it will live on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. I also encourage you to use our Q&A box located above or below your screen to submit any questions for our guest speaker today throughout our chat. And now it's my honor to introduce our speaker. Jonathan Navallo is a proud CSULB alum, earning his BS in Managerial Finance in 2002. He completed his MBA at the Sam Walton School of Business at the University of Arkansas in 2017, and is in the middle of pursuing his master's in urban planning from the Sol Price School of Public Policy at USC. In today's 49er Industry Chat, he will share his success in navigating multiple layoffs and career changes. From being laid off in his 20s to being laid off in his 30s, he has weathered multiple storms, both literally and figuratively, while building a career that has included the Irvine Company, Walmart International, and the Walton Family, and while working in industries such as investment banking, commercial real estate, and the highest net worth family in the world. While the companies and industries have changed, what hasn't is his focus on reading not only the external signals, but the internal ones in navigating his career. Currently, Jonathan is the head of real estate for the retail company in the Northeast and sits on the board of CIPA, a nonprofit dedicated to improving the lives of Filipino Americans. Please join me in welcoming today's Industry Chat host, Jonathan Navallo. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Very excited to have this chat with you with the topic, that we were talking before, that I think many of us have been in this situation and it's not really talked about. So, but let me start it off at the beginning. From your start, what was your experience like at CSULB and why did you choose to attend here?
Well, so my experience at CSULB was good, but it was, I'll be candid, I wasn't really in a mindset thinking that I want to go to school. I remember, it kind of was just the next thing, at least for me, that I had to do. I remember graduating high school and I applied to CSULB, but I really didn't have any aspirations or any ideas of what I was going to do or, really be for the rest of my life. And so, growing up in an Asian family, it was like, well, you've got to go to school. You got to go to college. And I chose Long Beach State. I was happy I did. And I had a really, really great time here, but I will say it was a very difficult transition for me. In high school, I didn't really have to study. And so I was able to graduate with honors by never having to, even spend any time other than what I was doing in class. And then I get inserted into college and, I think, I could do an 8 a.m. class, that's fine. And then, I don't have to go to class. I could just read the book on my own. And that first semester, I think my GPA was like a 1.2 or something. I think I had like 3 Ds and an F. And so it was, yeah. And thankfully I never got expelled, but, I had to learn to get my act together really quickly. And I think that was one of the, the biggest experiences for me was, really learning how to not only study, but what it takes to kind of be successful. And it was a long road for me, but it was one of those where, it's essentially getting thrown into the fire and I really had to learn. And that's why it took me a little bit, longer than 4 years to graduate Long Beach State. But because of that, I really think it helped, build my thick skin and my work ethic to really enable me to be successful in the future.
Wonderful. So I know you have some slides prepared. Do you want to go through them right now?
Yes, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Okay. So here we go. So, from the moment we're born, we're all placed into a process where if we follow that process, we'll achieve success. Now, in the beginning, this process is created by your parents, what you eat, when you sleep. And we're taught that if you follow this process, you'll get that candy, you'll get that prize, and you'll get success. Then we go to school and this process changes and expands. Only now you're not only in it by yourself, but you're joined by several other individuals. And you start to realize that the process not only affects you, but everyone else around you. And it's at this point that you begin to collectively believe that if you all follow this process, all of you will succeed. You know, you'll get that pizza party, you'll get no homework. But if you all do what you're supposed to do, everyone will get success. And then you become a senior and you follow this process for your entire life and you reach the pinnacle of success for most 17, 18, or 19-year-olds. You go to prom, you graduate high school, and you go to college. And then you get to college and you receive really the greatest amount of freedom most of us have ever had at that point. Now, how we treat that freedom obviously varies from person to person, but as part of that freedom, you choose to continue to further commit yourself to this process. Whether you're a business major, a bio major, or undecided, you've committed to yourself that you are going to graduate and get your diploma, and that by doing so, it's going to lead to success. Now, the great thing about this process is that there are guardrails in place to help you succeed. Notifications that assess your current position in real time relative to your success. Now, these guardrails aren't designed to just hand them to you, but rather it's to let you know if you need a helping hand. And thankfully, these are your grades, right? So the great thing about these grades is that they're not final till the end of the semester or the end of the year. And so with each assignment and each test and participation score, you're given a real-time assessment of where you stand and if you need, what you need to do to improve. Now, college is really great because it teaches you two very important things. One, it teaches you the hard skills, right? It teaches the math, the English, the statistics. It teaches you the things you're going to need to know, at least initially, to be successful in your field of choice. Two, it teaches you the soft skills, how to meet people, how to live with someone you don't know, how much alcohol you could drink before passing out. But it teaches you these very important social skills needed to be able to navigate the political landscape when you enter the workforce. And then you graduate college, you get a job, and then you move into a new process, but one that is very much like the process you've been in your entire life. I work hard, I do my job, I don't cause problems, and I'll succeed. Now, disruption has become a very popular word today. For most, disruption means a radical change to an existing industry or market due to technological innovation. I'm sure all of you know of them. You know, they're the Ubers, the Airbnbs, the Teslas. These companies have come into established industries, blew them up, and changed the way we do business. And when we hear disruption, that's what we think. But when we look at the root word itself, disruption is a disturbance or problems which interrupt an event, activity, or process. A process like the one you, me, and most of us here have been living our entire lives. So the purpose of today was I pose a question. What happens when this process is taken away? What happens when it's ripped from you without warning and you're left with nothing but a 2-week paycheck and a cardboard box filled with your stuff? And it's not because you've done anything wrong or because you weren't a good employee, but because entirely of factors beyond your control. What happens and how do you succeed when your life is disrupted? So this is what I'm looking forward to discussing with all of you today, and that I hope I can help so that if you're ever in the situation of getting laid off 5 times in 10 years like I was, you're prepared. So first, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me today. I'm pretty sure I know most, if not all of you. And if I haven't met you, very nice to meet you. And I'd like to thank the 49er Industry Chat team for having me today and giving me the opportunity to speak to each of you.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It's just such a great visual. But yeah, I mean, being laid off, let's start at the beginning. So I know you graduated in 2002. You went on, what was your first job like before you started your MBA? And then I'm supposing at somewhere in that point, you got laid off in your early 20s.
Yeah, well, so my actual first job that I don't talk too much about was I was working in a call center in Irvine, and so I graduated from Cal State Long Beach 2002. I went from undecided to bio major to business major, and then graduated in finance. And when I graduated in 2002, kind of right after the dot-com bubble had burst, I was looking for jobs, and the only job I can get was at a call center. And I'm not sure. I think most of the people on the call are closer in age to myself, but most of the time, what I was doing was telling people what their balance was. And so if you got to think, it feels like a long time ago when you had to get on the phone and ask someone what your bank balance was. But there was a whole, big call center filled with people who that was nothing. We did nothing but that all day. And I did that for, a couple months, and I realized, this is not what I want to do.
Right.
And so, it was with a bank, and there was an investment banking arm. And I remember reaching out to one of the investment bankers. He was nice enough to take my meeting. He looked at my resume, looked at what I was doing, and he was saying, hey, you're never going to be able to get this kind of job if you stay there. And like, for me, that was, I think when I really started realizing, I've got to reassess where I'm at as much as possible. So, the three things that I had mentioned in terms of how do you deal with disruption, one of them is kind of a constant reassessment. And so that was really one of the first times I said, okay, I thought if I had a finance degree, I can get a job at an investment bank. And it wasn't the case at all. And so that's when I said, okay, moving forward, whatever my goal is, I need to take a reassessment of where I'm at and to see, do I have the building blocks necessary to get to that position? And so kind of going on a long roundabout way, but the first job I usually tell most people out of college was I was an investment banker, but it was a very difficult road to get even that position. So when I remember looking at opportunities, and there was an opening at an investment bank in Orange County, and I remember applying, and I submitted everything, and I didn't hear back. And what's crazy is this wasn't just send your resume and you're good. What you had to do was you had to submit your resume, a cover letter, 2 letters of recommendation, and a copy of a business of a business analysis.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And so, this wasn't like anything simple. Now, thankfully, I was a finance major and I had a business analysis. I had a boss that I could get a letter of recommendation from, but I needed another one. And so this is where Long Beach State was really instrumental. Is there was a professor by the name of Daniel Ham, who's no longer there today, but he was he wasn't tenured, but he was an upper level finance professor. And I had him for a couple of courses. And I remember I was already out of college, and I had this opportunity to interview, and I reached out to him and I said, hey, Professor Ham, I'm your former student. I've got an investment banking interview. Can I meet with you so that I can prepare? Right. And so even though I wasn't a student, this professor, who I was able to build a relationship when I was a student and then build on that after, he took the time out of his own life to meet with me. Right. So and that's one thing that I'm always going to be grateful for. But also, the other aspect that I tell people is, if you want to be successful, you've got to build relationships. And that's at every single opportunity you have. Right. And so when we're students, especially in college, and especially undergrad, you're not really thinking about making friends with your professors. You're really just thinking, what do I got to do to graduate? And he was just one of those professors that I was able to connect with and then build a relationship, one where a student-teacher relationship. And he took the time to teach me. And because of him, I was really able to ace the interview and get the job. Right. And I was, there's a lot of things that had to go my way for me to get that job. But one of them was really getting a helping hand from my professor at Long Beach State.
Right. And you talk about something that we started to talk about. It's like building that network. You never know who might be able to guide you, but also like now we talk about mentorship. Back then it wasn't called that, but kind of that's what it was, of seeking, people in the roles that you hopefully want to pursue one day, and just getting information is key as well.
Agreed, agreed. But to go back to your original question, it was there at the investment bank. I was there for about 2 years, and then they got bought by H&R Block, and of course, everybody got laid off. So that was my first layoff. Now, I will say, with the background of investment banking, I was in the sell side advisory side, helping companies sell, and then seeing what happens when they get bought. Everybody there knew that we were all probably going to get laid off. So from that aspect, I wasn't too shocked that I got laid off, and I was actually really well prepared.
Okay.
But I remember thinking, okay, I was able to dodge that bullet. Um, I left there. I joined a company called Jones Lang LaSalle, which is one of the biggest real estate brokerage firms in the world. Stayed there for about 2.5 years, and then I decided I want to go to the equity side, and I joined a company called Equity Office Properties, which is one of the largest office REITs in Southern California. I was there for about 3 months, and then they got bought by Blackstone, and I got laid off. So that's layoff number two. That one is actually when I started getting worried. Thankfully, it was a really good environment. They actually afforded me a really generous severance package. And I made the stupid comment to myself. I said, boy, this is great, because I was there for about 6 months, and then they paid me the rest of my salary for that year. So I had 6 months of salary, and I said, God, I hope I get laid off every year. And actually it ended up happening almost exactly as I said, because I left there. I moved to Seattle. I joined a real estate private equity firm, and I was there for about 2 years. Then the global financial crisis hit, and I got laid off again. And that's when I really didn't know what was going to happen. That one came out of the blue. I remember my boss walking in and saying, "Hey, Jonathan, we're laying off the team in about 2 weeks. You got about 2 weeks to finish everything up." And thankfully, what I did was I emailed all my contacts. And then one of my contacts from Jones Lang LaSalle, who was a good friend, said, "Hey, we need somebody." So, this goes to kind of point two, is that one way to make sure that you can handle these disruptions in life is to ensure that you have a really good support network and a really good relationship network out there, so that if these opportunities arise, you're able to be able to fill those. And I think a big part is that the reason I was able to get this job so quick was because I had established a reputation for being really good at what I do. And I think, and that's why, in my kind of opening monologue, if you will, sometimes you get laid off and it's not your fault, right? And there's nothing you can do. But if you've built up this reputation as being an individual who is dependable, who is focused, and who pays attention to the details and overall adds value, other people, whether they work with you or not, they're going to see that. And if they find out that you're in a difficult position, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be able to either help you or point you in the direction. So when I got laid off, I was able to land a really quick job in San Francisco, working for a firm called Grubb & Ellis, another brokerage firm. And I was there for about a year doing institutional sales. And then after that year, they got bought out, and I got laid off again. So that was layoff number, I think we're on number
4.
four. We're on off layoff number 4. And so now I've gone from laid off in Southern California, laid off in Seattle, laid off in San Francisco. I was, but I knew it was coming. So I was able to kind of reach out. And again, because of the relationships I had an opportunity to join a company in Newport Beach called Dexus Property Group, international REIT. Was there for about 2.5 years. They got bought out by Blackstone, and then I got laid off again. But by this time, both with Grubb & Ellis and Dexus, I had already been able to know that those layoffs were coming, right? And so, this, going back to point one, it's really about kind of that self-assessment, always knowing, where do I stand? What are my skills? And what are the issues with the company that I'm at? And then saying, okay, if the worst happened, what would I do? And so what I've learned, even now in my career, is from day one, I'm updating my resume, right? So every time, each of those companies, I had updated my resume immediately. By the time I got laid off, I already had either interviews or really promising prospects, right? And so, and that's built through the relationships I had, as well as knowing where I stand. So I go to Newport Beach, there for about 2.5 years. They get bought by Blackstone. I get laid off again. And then at this time, I took a little bit of time. I consulted for a bit. Then I joined the Irvine Company. And at the Irvine Company, I joined their apartment development division. And I was doing, primarily these really large multi-million-dollar developments, but on the finance side. So not really doing the pure real estate side that I enjoyed. And it was at this time I kind of felt like I was in a lull. You
Mhm.
know, I was able to get to the level of manager, but it was a very difficult climb. And honestly, I didn't have my MBA, and I was stuck at a company, and it wasn't a good fit. And I think that's the other big thing that for anyone listening, really needs to think about is the company I'm at, are we a good fit?
Right.
Because there's always this belief that if I work hard enough, I can move up. But the fact of the matter is, at least in my experience, is sometimes you're not a good fit. And even if you can get promoted, if it's not the right place, you're going to top out. Right. So for instance, the Irvine Company, I started as a senior financial analyst, got promoted to manager, but I just knew intrinsically that the probability of me ever getting promoted was very low. Right. And so I had to make a conscious
What was it,
decision.
you had
I
like
gotta
a
leave.
feeling, or it wasn't like you didn't have a vibe with management? Like how did you know?
Yeah, well, so one was my manager and I didn't see eye to eye.
Mhm.
That's one thing. But the other side is the way that certain companies run, do they align with how you want to do things? So as an example, I'm a very outgoing person. I like to do deals. I was stuck in a kind of more of a back office role, if you will. And so I had always wanted to get to the front side, but I was never given an opportunity. And so if you're stuck in a role where you feel like you're in a rut and you're not 100% doing what you want to do, and more importantly, if you feel that you're being underutilized, then it's really a recipe for disaster. And then you throw in, if the company and you, in terms of their culture, doesn't fit, that's when it can be a very, very difficult hill to climb if you want to be successful, right?
Right,
And in
right.
some ways, you need to reevaluate what you think is success. But to your question, it wasn't a culture fit between me and them. Even though I was able to get promoted and move up, I knew down the line the way that they operate wasn't a fit for the way that I work.
Mhm.
And then that's when I got the opportunity to join Walmart. And it was really this was about 2015, and this is really when things like took off, if you will. So I was in Southern California. I had a wife. We had one kid who wasn't even one. And I got this opportunity to go to Arkansas. And it wasn't an easy decision. It was an easy decision from the sense of, okay, this is going to be great for my resume. But as a person of color, do I want to move to the South? That was not an easy discussion to have. And I remember telling my friends and my mentors, I said, hey, I'm moving, I'm going to Arkansas. And everyone's like, why? It's like, why would you do that? And so that was something that I had to wrestle with. But I said, well, that's where Walmart is. It's a great opportunity. And so everyone, when they heard that, they understood. But it's funny, most people, especially on the West Coast, kind of have this visceral reaction when they hear the South. They think, oh my God, what are you doing?
Right.
Right. And so, but we moved there, and actually, like I said, it was probably the second most impactful role I had next to the investment banking job, because this kind of just set me up for success moving forward. Right. And so, that constant reassessment and trying to make sure you put yourself in the best environment. So I took myself out of an environment that I knew I wasn't going to grow, which was unfortunately Southern California, the Irvine Company, put myself into Arkansas Walmart, and I was able to really flourish. And there's, a couple of reasons. One, Walmart as a company, one, it's extremely large, right? It's a Fortune 1.
Right.
So there are some bad stories that are out there, but each one's going to be different. I was lucky enough to be in a group that was really, really good, open, and entrepreneurial, as real estate tends to be. So the entrepreneurial aspect really worked well with my skills and abilities and my demeanor. There, I was also able to get my MBA with the
Right.
University of Arkansas. So that was another, really big notch that I was able to add. And because of those two things, being able to succeed at Walmart, do real estate kind of for an entire region, and get my MBA, it led to my role with the Walton family. And here's the other thing. The reason I got the Walton family role was because of a relationship, right? So, there wasn't a job opening that was on LinkedIn or anything. It was really a conversation. Someone knew about my abilities and my skills in real estate. and relayed that to the Walton family, and the Walton family reached out to me and said, hey, we'd like to meet you. Right. And so that's another thing, that, can't harp on enough. Where I'm at today is due in large part because of the relationships I built with other people, and
Right.
people that I wouldn't even, think would lead to there. So the relationship that came here was with a girl in my MBA class who we only sat next to because both of our names start with N. I mean, so
You
talking
never
about,
know.
yeah, you never know, but talking about a completely random thing, because her last name is Nally, my last name is Navallo. We sat next to each other, became friends. And then because of her, I was able to work for the Walton family. Um, and then I guess let's get down to the last two jobs of my career. I was with the Walton family, head of real estate for about 2 years, really great opportunity. Um, did a lot of great stuff. But at the end of 2 years, I could see we had acquired enough real estate where I don't know if what was left after that. And so that's when I got the opportunity to work for Walmart International. And so there I oversaw 6 markets, those being China, Japan, the UK, India, Canada, South Africa. I got to visit half of those. Unfortunately, COVID happened, but it was just a great opportunity to meet those teams, to go out, go to China, go to Mexico, go to Canada. And then, going back to the reassessment, I was looking at Walmart where they stood from. And, when I started, we had 10 markets. When I left, they only had 5. Right. So Walmart International was selling their markets. And again, it doesn't take a genius to kind of look at that and say, real estate isn't their focus. I'm a real estate professional. My job's probably at risk in the future. I need to find a new opportunity. And then that's where the opportunity I'm at today kind of came about. And so, again, because I've always got everything up to date, and, one of those big things is my LinkedIn. A
Right.
recruiter found me, reached out to me, had quite a few interviews. It kind of came really quick. And then before I knew it, my family and I were moving to Rhode Island, and I became the head of real estate. So, you know, that's kind of my very long career in terms of how I got from the beginning to the end. As you could see, there was a ton of layoffs in the beginning. And a big part of that was just learning that, okay, always kind of take stock of where I'm at in my company, and try to foresee where we're going to be in the future. And if I think there's any concern, then I need to make plans to leave. Right.
Right.
And I could tell you about 10 years ago, I was invited by a finance club at Long Beach State, and they were talking to me, and they saw my background, and they said, it doesn't look bad that you've been laid off so much, or that you jump a lot. And what I told them, I said, that's true, but this isn't, and this is even more so today, the world where you stayed at a company for 30 years doesn't exist anymore.
No,
Right.
it
If you stay
doesn't.
for 10 years, you're lucky. Right. You look at these founders, and I know one of the guys on the call works with nothing but founders and startups. These founders will start a company and then sell it and then do another one. Right. So the idea that you stay at anywhere for a long time is really gone. I think the idea now is, can I continue to stay in an industry and a business that I love, and then continue to help myself grow and get promoted? And at least for me, that'll ultimately lead to, that position that you want, and ultimately that success.
Right. And you kind of talked about it right now, but I have questions. One of the questions is, how do you address a layoff when interviewing for the next job?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And in my opinion, you tackle it head on, right? So if you're talking to an interviewer and they say, walk me through your resume, don't just say I went from here to here and then hope they don't ask why you only stayed there for a year, or why you were laid off. Be upfront. Tell them, look, there was layoffs at the company, but then tell them whether you were like the last wave, whether it was because it was out of your control. A lot of things I say is, I go, look, the company got bought out and I got laid off. One thing I didn't say is 2 of the companies I work for got bought by Blackstone. So my joke is always, look, if you hire me, the company may get bought out in the next couple of years and you'll become a multimillionaire, right? So
Right.
probably a good idea to hire me. So I think tackling it head on, and then being truthful, and then just being upfront is probably the best way to address it. And especially with layoffs, look, even if you were, say, laid off because of performance, the fact that you were laid off means that it wasn't because of your performance, right? So just being clear about that, I think is how you address that.
Right. Another question that goes along, do you think it would reflect poorly to the potential future employers if your resume shows several consecutive layoffs? If so, how do you navigate sharing your past work experience in a positive light?
Yeah, so I mean, I had to go through that, right? So there was a period again where, it wasn't until recently I had never held a job longer than 2 years. And looking at that as your resume, you can only say you don't job hop, but when you've got 6 jobs in 10 years, there's no way to hide that. And so if that is the case, what you do, the way I always phrase it is that, unfortunately, some of the companies that I've worked for, they didn't last as long as I'd hoped. But I can assure you that every time I was laid off, that because of my work ethic, because of the political capital I was able to build and the relationships I had, I was able to secure a job immediately thereafter. Right. And it's because of my work ethic and what people know of my reputation, every single time I got laid off, I was able to get a job really quickly. Right. And so the reason I like that answer is it says two things. One, it tells the employer, the potential employer, a little bit more about your work ethic, right? You're telling them that, look, I'm a really good worker, but you're saying, as proof of that, I was able to get hired really quickly, right?
Right.
And again, now if you've got a really, really big gap, that may not work. But if you have a gap, then you could say, after getting laid off, I really wanted to take a step back and reassess my situation, right? And I wanted to make sure that the next company I went to, I was putting myself in the best position to succeed. And then you say, and that's why I applied to you, because when I looked at your company, it has all the building blocks of what I see when I look at a company as being successful and where I can succeed. So again, turning it back on them and letting them know, look, I got laid off, but I was able to get a job. Or if I wasn't, I'm taking my time to make sure that the next company I go to is going to be successful. And that's why I applied to you today, because I believe you're going to be successful moving forward, and I can help you.
Right. Great. Did you intentionally explore different industries after each layoff? What advice do you have for someone who has lost their job this past year and is using it as an opportunity to reinvent themselves and switch industries?
I kind of did. I mean, every time I got laid off, I did think about it. Now, one thing is, some of the times I got laid off was during the global financial crisis, right? So kind of the statement that beggars can't be choosers, I was in that role. So for instance, the job I had at Grubb and Ellis in San Francisco, it was back to brokerage, and I wasn't 100% wanting to go back to brokerage, but I knew that the opportunity for me to get a job was low in real estate, so I took it. Now, in terms of if you're wanting to look at different industries or maybe do a change, I think after a layoff is a good opportunity. But I also think, what you need to do to build on that is really to reach out to people who are in that industry and make those connections, right? And so, I think LinkedIn right now is really powerful in a way that I didn't think before. And so what LinkedIn really gives you is the opportunity to almost look at everybody's resume. And because of those connections, you can connect with people in different industries and ask them, hey, I'd love to learn more. Right. And I think the easiest way to get a role is to build a relationship with someone and then have them vouch for you. Right. Because at the end of the day, I think every employer just wants to they want to minimize the risk with every employee. And if they come with a recommendation, that helps minimize that risk. So if you're someone who's been laid off this year and you're taking a step back and you're really trying to reevaluate what you want to do, one thing in terms of figuring out what industries is I would write down what are the skills that I have and which are the ones that are applicable to other industries. And then I'd identify an industry I want to be in, look at the skills that are needed. Do my skills translate? And if they do, then I would start reaching out to professionals in that industry, whether it's on LinkedIn or through personal relationships, under the guise of I'd like to learn more, and then asking and then trying to use that relationship to see if you can get an opening.
Right. And I think in previous comments, you talked about like between every layoffs, at one point you said you were prepared. Like, how does someone prepare themselves or, the potential of being laid off. And then it
Yeah,
kind of goes into another question that we got about morale. What advice do you have on how to keep morale up in between layoffs? How do you dust yourself off and keep putting yourself out there for the next opportunity?
yeah. I mean, if you've seen the movie Rocky 3, when he's, yeah, no, not like that, but the way I mean, like I said, so whenever I go into any role, immediately day one, I'm updating my resume, right? So I think that's really important, is that you always want everything fresh. I've got, so a friend of mine, she's been in this role almost her entire life, and she thought she was going to get laid off, and she said, I've never updated my resume, right? And so, that's kind of one of the things, is no matter how long you've been in a role, I think day one, update your resume with your new position and update your LinkedIn, right? And so one way to prepare is always make sure that your resume is ready to go at any given time, right? It doesn't mean you're giving it out, but it does mean if an opportunity comes, you don't have
It's
to
ready
say,
to
hey, let
go.
me go back and type it, right?
Right.
And the other way to prepare is, again, always looking at the landscape of the industry you're in. So like I said, when I joined Walmart, we were building a ton of new stores. And then around 2017, all these retailers started to close, right? Amazon really became this big behemoth. And so, if I was just kind of sitting there and not paying attention, I could have gotten caught off guard, which I saw some people go through. I mean, I could tell you at Walmart, I went through, I don't know, 4 or 5 layoffs in the 2 years I was there, right? And so the other way to prepare yourself is always, keeping an eye down the road, is in terms of the industry that your company is in, is how is that, what's the health of that industry, along with the health of your company. Um, and always looking at, see, what are the opportunities out there. The other thing that I didn't mention, that I always make sure that I have a really strong stable of, is recruiters. So I think one of the people on the Zoom is a recruiter today, but that's another thing that I'm always making sure that I've got a really strong relationship with. Some people, they get into a job they like, then a recruiter calls and they just brush them off.
Right.
And my position is, look, even if I'm happy, that doesn't, and I may not want that job, but who's to say that I couldn't refer someone good? So I want to hear about it. One of my bosses when I was at Jones Lang LaSalle, he was the top broker, came in, essentially managing director, making a ridiculous amount of money. And he said he'll always take a call from a recruiter because he always wants to hear what they have to say. And so that's another way to be prepared. Now, a recruiter is not going to help you move to another industry, but if you're in industry you love, like me, I love real estate. Always having close contacts with recruiters is going to help me, because if I get laid off, those are the people who are going to be able to help me find a role.
Right. And it goes back to building your relationships, maintaining your relationships, and building that network that you could reach
Exactly.
to in the time of need. Yeah. Another question from our audience members. What factors did you consider to help with your decision to leave your old company and join the new company? How did you assess risk to move, especially during this challenging year due to COVID uncertainty?
Yeah, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier. So I'm in Walmart International. I'm overseeing 6 international markets, and we sell 4 of them, right? So immediately I know, in terms of real estate professionals and real estate as a whole, my company is putting less emphasis on that. So I think it's really, they always say follow the money, and I think that's important. Where is your company spending money? And if it's not in your division or in things that you do, I think that's a pretty good indication that your importance to the company is being lessened. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to get laid off, but it could potentially mean the opportunities for you to continue to grow and succeed are going to be fewer and far between, right? And so my company at that time, Walmart International, was doing that. They were selling all their markets. And again, when I went into that role, it wasn't a role that I saw had a very long runway, in terms of the next 5 years. And so it wasn't a difficult decision to kind of say, okay, I'm going to leave this, right? And so because I knew they were going to, at some time in the future, probably consolidate and get rid of some of those positions, I knew it was a matter of time. And then with my new company, I did my due diligence, right? I looked at, so right now, Ocean State Job Lot, I'm sure most of the people haven't heard of them. I'll be honest, I didn't know who they were. but they're a very, very successful company here in the Northeast. They did 800 million in sales last year. They're extremely well capitalized. They're a private company. They have a charitable foundation that gives significantly, both in monetary and in food. And so by looking at the financial health of the company, I said, okay, that's a company that is going to be strong. And the other thing is just ask the question in the interview, when was the last time you had a layoff? I mean, you don't want to be scared. And interviews really, it's an opportunity for them to know if they want to hire you, but it's also an opportunity for you to
Right.
decide if you want to work for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a couple, there is a good feeling, especially earlier in career, when you get the job and you could say no, right? Because it means
Right.
they wanted you, but you got a better opportunity.
Mm.
And so you should always go in with that mindset that, hey, I'm interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing me, especially now in kind of a labor constraint. And then, when I looked at the position, I always ask, okay, what's the next role, right? If I go into this position, how much responsibility do I have? And then what's the opportunity? And so, now when I went into this role, I saw the opportunity is really amazing for me. And that helped me make the decision.
Wonderful. So I know we have a couple minutes left, but
Yeah.
question from the audience, how did you go from finance to now earning your degree in urban planning? And what was your thinking to pursue this degree?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is probably not, kind of not the normal way we go about, but again, so I had my MBA. I was working for the Walton family, and my job with them was really, we were revitalizing downtown areas in Northwest Arkansas. So we had three closed-ended private funds where we were investing millions of dollars in trying to revitalize these areas. And I said, I've got my MBA, I've got my real estate background. It would really be helpful to get an understanding from an urban planning perspective, because at one time we were looking to build a city. And so if I'm trying to buy real estate and bring in different businesses into Northwest Arkansas, getting an understanding of urban planning would be something that's really helpful. And that's another thing that I see, that I believe in, and that I see a lot of leaders do, is kind of this insatiable desire to continue to learn and to be curious, right? And I mean, I'm curious about a ton of things. My mind goes off at different places, but urban planning was one of those. And I was lucky enough, I told my bosses at the time, I said, hey, I really think I could be more valuable if I got my urban planning degree. Would you pay for it? And they said yes. And so
Wow.
I was lucky enough that I had an employer who said, I'll pay for your second master's, right? But I mean, in that same vein, I'm looking to see what are the things that are going to help me add value. Like one of the degrees or certifications that I'm always thinking of is, should I get my CFA, which is the Chartered Financial Analyst. In addition, I've only got one more class to get my CCIM designation. So, always trying to make sure that, am I continuing to grow myself and be able to add more value? And that's why I pursue the urban planning. And that's why I'm almost done with my CCM designation. And that's why I would, recommend to everyone, take some time to always learn something new.
To
That sounds so
upskill
hokey,
or
but it's true.
always upskill, or the continuing learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. So I know we're up against time. I think we got all the questions that people asked today, but any final thoughts, observations, recommendations, or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our students and our alumni, especially those that will watch it in the recording later on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would take away just from the experience I've had and others is, always take the time to kind of help somebody out. And the reason I say that, again, it started with my professor who took the time out of his day to help me. But, and it's kind of coming for a circle. That same professor I spoke to yesterday, he's thinking of a career change and he's asking me, could I help him? Right. And now, because I have really strong relationships at the University of Arkansas, I know quite a few of the people at UC, USC, I'm saying, I could, if you see something, I could make a call. And, I think that encompasses kind of everything. The other part is always be really respectful and nice to everyone. I always see, and one thing that I cringe at I cringe when people say like, oh, that's my team, that's my analyst, that's my manager, because it always sounds so possessive. And I
Mhm.
remember I had one boss who would always call me her colleague when she introduced me to people, even though she's the managing director of everything. I'm her analyst. She said, "This is my colleague." And I think that fosters respect. And I think, the most thing you want to do is you respect everyone you work with and build those relationships. Because again, you don't know if you're going to need, someone someday. And if you treated them the right way, they're going to help you out. Like I said, you know, my professor went from helping me, and now I've got an opportunity to help him. And I think that, if I could help him, that would be the best way I could say thank you.
Yeah, definitely. A full circle. Before we go, if any of our students or alumni would like to reach out, I know you mentioned being on LinkedIn. Are you okay if they were to reach out on LinkedIn to connect with you?
Yeah, please. Again, connect with me even on, my emails on there too. I mean, that's the other thing. I would say use LinkedIn to its fullest. It's really a powerful tool. I've one of my mentees who's actually on this call or on this Zoom has used it in amazing, amazing ways, in ways I didn't even think were possible, and has completely blown me away with what he's done in terms of finding opportunities on LinkedIn. He even got me a job interview because of his network. And so again, there's another great example is, he came to me a lot of years ago asking me to help him. And then not too long ago, he actually got me a job interview. And so again, that building that relationship and helping people. But again, reach out to me. If for some reason it won't, send my emails there and you can send an invite, but I'm happy to connect with any alumni or anyone on the call, and again, continue to build relationships. Although I'm pretty sure I know most everybody on here. So
Well,
thank
thank
you guys for joining me.
thank you for everyone that joined us today. Again, this was recorded and will live on our video library on our website. Follow us on social media and or visit our website to learn about our future chats. So we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you,
Jonathan,
everyone.
if you want to hold